Do you have a feeling about like girls that are like 18 or 19 that are jumping on OnlyFans maybe to make money? Like, is this the type of thing that you think is good for society? Do we want girls to have that option? Should they be taking that option? Like, how do you feel about people that jump in at like pretty early ages? I've seen it's kind of funny because the porn industry for OnlyFans stuff is experiencing what the early kind of like YouTube esports gaming industry is, where I see some of the new contracts being written up. A friend of my wife had this happen, who was like getting in just new. She's like, oh, I'm so excited. Like, this is so cool. And I was like, really? Like, what's going on? And this is a girl who basically like got into doing full on like OnlyFans stuff, and she has like 15 followers. They like have ownership completely of her TikTok account and her OnlyFans account. They're giving her 50% of revenue. They're charging her for like every photo shoot she does, and it's like, this is the worst contract I've ever seen in my entire life.
Appreciate the big show that you're having, but I don't want to continue this.
Holy
me.
Are you okay?
Hey, yeah, my computer's down there, so I was getting everything situated.
Gotcha. Hey, what's up? How you doing?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
I had so much enjoyment from that. I'm like, maybe this is a little bit of righteous anger, but I got some of my own griefs out just watching you have that very short conversation that you did.
Have you had like more engagement with her besides that one conversation?
Just that, and then I think a little bit on Twitter, and then I eventually blocked her because it's just like mind-numbing how she's just like not open to receiving anything that you say, and it's just like repeat. And I'm like, I'm not going to get anywhere except just piss myself off.
Mm-hmm. Are you what is like roughly like your background? Like, how do you attach to this world of like arguing about like porn and everything? Where does your advocacy come from? Like, yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, so I was in the porn industry for like 12 years, and now I've been kind of like self-producing for the last 5. Now I do podcasting that covers a whole bunch of other topics, but I would say an area that I specialize in or talk a lot about is just sexuality and like the choice, I guess, that comes down to it. So it's not blanketly saying the porn industry is great and all butterflies, because it's absolutely not. So I feel like I don't have a camp because I'm critical of it, but I also support choice. And I don't think the porn industry is bad or sex work is bad. I think people's freedoms are kind of like the most important factor in this moral grandstanding that's kind of getting a rebirth of evangelical motives, I guess, and then masking it as we're just trying to protect women is really frustrating.
Yeah. Have you would you say that the industry's changed significantly in the past, like, I don't know, like 10 or 20 years? Or do you think it's roughly like the same as it was before, where some of it's good, some of it's bad? Or do you have like strong opinions on that? Or
I think there's been a huge evolution in the industry. So if you look, but even back at the 90s, there was zero power that most women had within the industry. You were beholden to these giant companies. There weren't any royalties. You didn't own the content. So you kind of put yourself in this very vulnerable spot and quite literally showing yourself to the world, and then you have nothing to fall back on after. So now we have third-party platforms like OnlyFans where you can self-produce, own your content. You're in charge of what you're filming, how you're filming, the safety on set. I think it's vastly different.
Gotcha. Well, damn. Do you when you say you talk like sexuality, is it like are you like a sex educator like Lacey Green used to be on YouTube? I don't know if you remember that, or do you just
no,
like talk?
it's not like official training or anything like that, or it's just my own experience, because I think there's this quote that sex is a journey and not an action, and I think our relationship to sex just individually evolves throughout time, and just kind of sharing the nuance to thinking like, yes, there can be a sacred union behind sex, but it can also be frivolous and fun, and it doesn't have to necessarily be one or the other. It can be both, and you're in charge of how you look at that sexual expression. So more just like by modeling and not coaching or anything like that.
Where are you at today on like do you talk about stuff related to like kind of Me Too movement and stuff? Do you have like any feelings about I guess like where the culture is at right now in terms of talking about sex? Like
So that frustrates me because I think it was very necessary, and I think that there were a lot of bad actors that kind of were exposed through sunlight. But just like any other movement, it kind of gets hijacked by hysteria, and then now it turns into believe all women. Well, I don't think that that's necessarily helpful, because I know plenty of women that lie or have an agenda or trying to maybe like get back at somebody. So I think that due process is important. I think that presenting evidence is important, and I know that that's not always possible in some of those situations, but I think we kind of have to approach it with an open mind and not just ruin somebody's life because someone's just making an accusation and that's all that they have. So I think that there does need to be some evolution there. And I mean, when it comes to people using the porn industry as an example of having way more harassment or violence or trauma on set, I mean, I used to be in the food industry. I was a bartender, and I was harassed way more frequently, grabbed way more frequently in that environment than I was on set. So, I mean, you can't just say because it's sex work, you're inherently more at risk of being victimized. I don't find that to be true in my experience.
Yeah, I was gonna have when the lady said like you don't get traumatized working retail, that was really funny to me because I did food service for a long time. It was like I don't know about that. To be fair, like sex work is like a special like there is a fundamental difference I think between engaging in sex for work versus like doing retail. But I think kind of like you said, I think everything's kind of got its ups and downs, and then it's our job, I guess, to try to capitalize on the ups as much as possible and then limit the downs as much as possible. Especially since porn and sex work probably aren't going anywhere, considering they've existed for like all of human history.
Right, and the downs are already illegal. It's already illegal to rape someone, to harass someone. There's a protocol for that. So to say the whole industry needs to be banned or not exist, which is what she kind of champions, well, those behaviors are already not accepted within society. So now what do we do to prevent that in the future? And what do we do when people do cross those boundaries?
Do you sorry, I'm super out of everything. Are you still like active in the porn industry, or are you completely retired or done from that, or?
So I have an OnlyFans account, and I self-produce there, but I'm not within like the mainstream industry anymore. Gotcha.
When you worked before, did you like solo do everything, or were you working under like a major like label or studio, or?
So most of my career, I was contracted to a major studio, but I did do a little bit of freelancing. There definitely are a lot of disadvantages to those contracts, like they're not in favor of the performer, but that's any entertainment industry. If you look at music contracts, right, they're massively predatorial, so it's not unique in that sense. I think people get really triggered or inflamed because it's around sex, and we're already kind of icky about that in general. So when you mix money into that, I think it just makes people kind of get tunnel vision and they don't look at it with any nuance.
Do you how do you feel about, so okay, there's a question. Have you ever heard, okay, sorry, let me start here. Somebody asks somebody, should you be allowed to sell a kidney in exchange for money, right? Like, let's say that like there's $1 million kidneys, and the argument generally goes, well, maybe that'd be okay. And then somebody say, well, maybe that wouldn't be okay because then poor people would be selling their kidneys. And then it's like, well, what if a poor person has absolutely nothing in life but to sell their kidney? Like, is it exploitative to offer that in like as like a public transaction? Like, should that be something that should be allowed to happen? When you look at things like OnlyFans or sex work in general, like, do you have a feeling about like girls that are like 18 or 19 that are jumping on OnlyFans maybe to make money? Like, is this the type of thing that you think is good for society? Do we want girls to have that option? Should they be taking that option? Like, how do you feel about people that jump in at like pretty early ages?
So I think that we have regulation with most industries, and for some reason there doesn't seem to be a lot with porn. No one wants to talk about it because, again, we just get so inflamed that we can't look at it with like a fresh set of eyes. I'm a really big proponent of raising the age of entry. I think it should be 21, just like drinking. I have that opinion on other things, but it's just like you don't fully understand the gravity of that decision at that age. I got in at 21 and I didn't understand the gravity of that decision. And when I say that, I mean, if you get super popular, you will never be able to have a regular job again because of all these morality clauses that most people have you sign. You won't. You'll have family members stop talking to you. You'll have friends stop talking to you. You'll have entire communities. In my experience, because I'm in the South, have tried to like kind of banish me and my husband and say you can't do business or talk to these people because they're not in alignment with our morality. So to make that decision at 18 or 19 is impossible. And I think also your motives are a little bit different at that age, right? You're chasing money, you're chasing followers and fame, and I think that that'll make you compromise a lot of your integrity. Whereas maybe if you're more established and you've had more experience with the world and how people work and how manipulation can kind of happen, then maybe you'll stand your ground and actually show up as yourself instead of being vulnerable to tossing away your integrity.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, and then it sucks because there's a lot of people that hop into that industry at a really early age, and then they don't even get that popular. They don't make a lot of money, but they still have like all the stigma of having stuff publicly posted out there and everything too.
Yeah, and then there's no room for redemption and there's no grace, and you're not taking into account that people change and evolve and grow. You kind of permanently freeze them in that space forever, and they're not allowed to do anything. But then they can't go back to the industry because that's also bad. So where do you want this person to go?
What are your biggest thoughts that you think people get wrong, or like huge misconceptions that people have about the industry that exists today? Like if you could wave a magic wand and everybody would at least know like one or two things.
I would say start with the trafficking thing. I think that this is something Megan does too, which is conflate pornography and sex work to human trafficking. So I was actually on the board of this nonprofit organization that works out of Nepal, and they, like, the whole point is to free women and children from sex trafficking, like real sex trafficking. Porn is illegal there. It's also illegal on the other side of the mountain in India. So by kind of abolishing it, it's not doing anything. I mean, the trafficking problem there is massive. So if trafficking is something that like you're drawn to wanting to help, and it's, you know, something that really pulls at your heartstrings, that's beautiful, and you can donate to a lot of legitimate charities, but don't mask your more issues on a moral level with something like that, because I think you're not serving the actual victims. Like, I've been in the industry for over a decade, and I've seen very few cases where, you know, someone was maybe mistreated on set or was being trafficked. You know what I mean? Obviously, like, there's cases you might not know because it could be happening in plain sight. We do know that exists, but it's not to the level, or it's not as like dark and gross as some of these people are trying to make it out to be.
Yeah. Normally when I bring people on is to argue with them. I think we probably mostly agree on things. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
I know when they were like, "Go on," I'm like, I'm not arguing anything. I feel like we probably agree on a lot of the things.
What do you think about the Lana Rhoades thing that was brought up by
Her
Megan?
saying that she wants it to be illegal?
Yeah. Because there have been some women that have come out that are like, this was horrible the whole time. I know a few that have said that, yeah.
So I know a little bit about her story. We were in the industry at the same time, and she did have a pretty bad experience, and just I've heard it from multiple sources. I think that just because you were taken advantage of doesn't mean that you shut down an entire industry. I mean, what would that mean for tobacco or big pharma or big alcohol? Like, people get taken advantage of.
Or music or athletics.
Music, right.
Yeah.
People literally have to change their names because their likeness is owned by a company. That's insane. So how can we create measures that are creator friendly? And I think some of what we're seeing, and no one wants to talk about it, but with like through Web3 or decentralized platforms and DAOs, I think maybe in the future we'll see something like that. But right now people want to stay really far away from that as well because of the whole scandal with FTX. But I think something like that, where you're giving more power to the creator, and at the end of the day, like, the buck stops with them. And I think that's a good way to stop those predatory exchanges from happening.
Do you think that fans platforms like OnlyFans are ultimately good, like a step in the right direction, or?
I think yes, it's a step in the right direction, but again, it's not decentralized. And so right now we started like an agency that helps OnlyFans girls manage their accounts. And when I tell you the stories and these like quote contracts that I see these girls sign, I say girls because they're like 19, 20, 21, so very young. First of all, like, these contracts aren't legal, but they don't know that, and they're basically getting bullied and harassed into it. These men are locking them out of their accounts. So OnlyFans is doing a pretty good job at doing like facial recognition. Like, you have to scan your face before you log in, so it does help from maybe like a man or an agency trying to take advantage of someone's account. But there's still spots that need to be filled, because I do see a lot of these younger girls getting taken advantage of. So again, it's like, how do you fix it? Or bring like the 2.0 version of that? And I think essentially it's got to be a decentralized model.
Gotcha. I've seen it's kind of funny because the porn industry for OnlyFans stuff is experiencing what the early kind of like YouTube esports gaming industry is, where I see some of the new contracts being written up. A friend of my wife had this happen, who was like getting in just new. She's like, "Oh, I'm so excited. Like, this is so cool." And I was like, "Really? Like, what's going on?" And this is a girl who basically like got into doing full on like OnlyFans stuff, and she has like 15 followers. They like have ownership completely of her TikTok account and her OnlyFans account. They're giving her 50% of revenue. They're charging her for like every photo shoot she does, and it's like, this is the worst contract I've ever seen in my entire life. Why would you ever sign this? Yeah, but it reminds me of the early days of like gaming and esports, where people are like, oh my god, like $300 a month, like I'll sell my soul for this much money. It's so cool. And I'm seeing a lot of the early OnlyFans stuff kind of happen like that with smaller creators sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to know your why going in, and I think if you go in it doe-eyed and you think that everyone is just going to be throwing gumballs and glitter at you and that you're going to be super famous and the next Jenna Jameson, you have something else coming. So I think, and my advice always to people that are thinking about going in is knowing your why. And is it like some form of authentic sexual expression, or are you doing it as like a means to an end? And then that's never good.
Yeah. Let's see. If you really want to fight, I would fight you on the Web3 stuff. Why do you think, I'm curious, why do you think decentralization is like helpful to anything related to pornographic stuff? Like, I feel like, if anything, I feel like more centralization is a little bit more helpful because you get databases to check for child porn, to verify identity, stuff like that. I feel like on a decentralized platform, it'd be easier for me or somebody to like take advantage of somebody.
Well, I think that already happens at scale, and those numbers are disgusting. So no matter what, that's a problem that people need to kind of get in front of. When I say decentralized, it probably can't be all the way. Like, it can't be 100% decentralized. There has to be some moderation for the reasons that you just gave, and to verify that no one's getting taken advantage of or abused. But I think when it comes to the content creation, being able to verify that like those funds and views are going back to the creator, and then also if there's like a redistribution of earnings within that company. So let's say we had a decentralized OnlyFans, and then they're doing disbursements, that the creators actually are shareholders, so that it's not just the one person owning it is making all of the money off of the quite literal bodies of the women involved, and in some cases the men involved, but mostly the women involved. So it's just more of a way to like give some more empowerment to the creator, and not have like a more dated model of predatorial behavior between these agencies and creators, whether it's music or gaming or pornography.
Gotcha. So almost kind of like a cooperatively owned platform, basically.
Kind of, yeah, similar to a DAO. It's funny, I was listening to this podcast with Robert Wolf, and I was joking, my husband sent it to me, and I was like, I think I was a Marxist for 2 hours, and he was just dying, because I did like the way that he was describing, like in the United States, we scream democracy all of the time, but when it comes to business, that it's not a democracy at all, and that the employees have zero say in how it's functioning. And I was like, that would be kind of cool. You would have to be very strict with the hiring process to make sure that your ethos and your vision for the company aligned. But like, let's say you did all of that, then you have employees that are more invested, and then they're getting some of the rewards on the back end. So I think something kind of like that would be kind of cool for any kind of digital creation in the future.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, damn. Anything else?
No, I'm so glad you did that debate, though. No one pushes back. I was watching her on Benjamin Boyce's, and I'm like, no one's pushing back. She's just deflecting and going somewhere else. And can we just admit that this is just simply she doesn't like pornography, and that's fine, but just don't guise it under something else. Like, I'm a woman and I have my own agency. I'm not traumatized. I've never been traumatized on set. I made my decisions myself consciously. It's not from a lack of other options or because I'm hooked on drugs, which is what she said earlier in your conversation. Like, I've never really done a drug besides like a psilocybin journey with a shaman, so hardly recreational drugs, you know what I mean? So all of these stereotypes that we throw on people is just insane. Like, yes, that exists, but it exists everywhere, and you're just like infantilizing all of these women that just look at sex different than you, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's probably my if we didn't fucking get anywhere in the conversation, but it feels interesting that like fundamentally we're talking about like limiting women's choices or options as being like the more empowering option, because ultimately that's kind of what she's pointing towards, which I think is kind of funny, but yeah.
Right. I think I'd be more traumatized by having to like lay brick for 12 hours a day for $20 an hour than I would be to go on set. You know what I mean? And ultimately it's the choice that matters.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree for sure. Especially today when you've got like Pornhub, when you've got like OnlyFans, when people can like film their own stuff, shoot their own stuff, upload their own stuff, and they don't necessarily have to be beholden to studios or anything. So Yeah.
What are your criticisms on the industry? Or critiques or adjustments?
I'm very far left, like socially, so I think that oh geez, I should have at least some, huh? I mean, like I have I have the obvious critiques, right? Like if there's like trafficking or prostitution, obviously, where I think everybody's against that. Even in industry, people are going to be against that. I do think it's a little scary when people jump in at early ages, but you mentioned that as well, that like a girl starting at 18 or 19 without having like any other socials built or whatever is basically just going to jump into almost like hardcore porn, and she's like put it all out there, and she's like 18, 19, has no build up. Yeah, that's pretty scary. Damn, chat, anyone else? Yeah, I don't know. I happen to like porn a lot, so pedo baiting is weird. I don't know if you feel anything about that. Some girls that do like the things where they always wear the skirts and they do like the rosy red makeup and they fucking filter their face sometimes to look like fucking kids. I think that's a little bit weird. I don't know if I would make it illegal or whatever, but oh, sorry. Go ahead. What were you gonna say? Then I have a big
I was gonna
question.
say I agree. Yeah, that was one of the conversation points that Ayla had, which is that she was kind of for that younger porn, and I don't know if I would necessarily make it illegal, but it's not content that I agree creating myself or putting out there.
Sure. Ayla is a bastion of immorality, so if she was advocating for it, probably not good. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, deepfakes. Do you have any feelings about these? I'm so curious.
Oh, like with the revenge porn that people are doing?
Kind of, yeah. Even you calling it that is already like normatively loaded. Like, is it revenge porn if it's not actually porn of them? Like, yeah, what do you feel about like the oncoming wave, the deluge of deep-faked porn?
So I say deep fake revenge porn because you have to ask why the person's creating it and uploading it without the consent of the other person. It's clearly to embarrass them. That's the goal. It's not like, oh, I thought that this was be a beautiful tribute to you and that you were just going to light up with glee when you saw, an AI version of you getting railed by 3 dudes online. Like, you right. So it kind of has that revenge element to it. I think I don't agree with that. I think that it could be really difficult for you to process and see yourself in that situation if that's not the way that you look at sex or sexuality, and there is a boundary that's being crossed, even though it's not your physical body, it is your likeness. And I don't know what the if there are legal repercussions or what we're doing with any of that, because it's so nuanced, but I'm not for it. But unfortunately it's going to be happening at scale for until we figure it out.
Do you think that should be like an illegal thing, or at the very least immoral? Even if, let's say you're not using it to flaunt at people, but you've got like websites where people can sign up and there's like deep fake porn of all their content creators or whatever. Do you think that stuff should be illegal?
I think it's 100% unethical, and I think you'd be hard pressed to argue counter to that. But illegal it's really tricky. Like, do you own your likeness? Because I don't know if
kind of, don't you? I think we do.
I think so, but I've seen other celebrities kind of go at it because like their likeness would be used on like a bag, we'll say. And who was it? It was like that really pretty DJ. She was in Orange is the New Black. They did it with her. One fashion line did, and she's like, well, that's not cool. Like, no, you didn't even ask, and I don't know what the consequence of that is. I think we're entering this space where your identity is going to be a commodity, whether you like it or not. So I think that there do need to be protections around that. So I would say, yeah. And again, with the advancements that we have with AI, you can create people that don't exist. So if you're just trying to create a financial model, like a website of all these really hot AI girls that don't actually exist in sexual encounters, you can do that without defacing a human that already exists. So it's like, why is that necessary?
Do you think it's interesting that when people talk about deep fakes, that it's always focused on the face and not the body? So for instance, like there could be a million deepfakes made over like porn you've done, and everybody would focus on the person's face being deepfake, but it seems like the person that actually shot the porn, like nobody really cares about that.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. I think if you're already a famous person that has explicit content out there, I think people would know that it wasn't you, and then they wouldn't be happy about that. And I don't know if you know this, you probably don't, but so we have an AI project we're working on right now, and buttholes are like the hardest thing to copy. So they're actually like more unique than a fingerprint. So when we're trying to recreate photo sets for models that already exist and they have a ton of explicit content out there, being able to recreate that part of their body is actually really difficult, and we're like struggling.
Interesting.
I know. So for someone that has it all out there, I think you would have to make the body very similar. If it was someone that you're doing like a revenge porn or something, or taking a civilian and doing that, I don't think it would matter.
Gotcha. Let's see. Deepfakes. Anything else? I think we're...
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, are you planning on like doing more of this type of like arguing with people on panels and stuff in the future, or was this just like a one-off like sex panel thing, or?
It was a one-time thing, and I didn't like how it made me feel, but as I told you earlier, it was one of my first ones, so I also was not well versed in that kind of dialogue or setup in general. Like, I don't tend to do well on panels. I never know when it's my time to step in or not, because I never want to seem like I'm interrupting people, because I also hate that move. But yeah, I don't know. I need to figure it out, because sometimes I feel like it's pointless. Like what you did, you remained so calm, and like, how is he being so calm right now? Because you're making a really valid objective point, and then they just talk over you and see how loud they can get, and then personal insults. Like, she was calling me a prostitute basically on the panel. And I'm like, you're purposely doing that to like take away from what I actually do, to elicit an emotion in the viewer. And like, there's just a level of dishonesty with a lot of people. And I'm like, I just don't even know how to engage with that.
And it feels very difficult when you're trying like your best in good faith, and if the other person isn't, you get like very much like taken advantage of in those conversations. Yeah.
Right. And I just don't see, and I feel more taken advantage in that panel than I did any time in my career, ironically. So yeah, I don't know. I like the more one-on-one conversations with people that are willing to look at different perspectives and maybe not necessarily agree at the end of it, but just like open-minded curiosity and civility. Those things I think are paramount before I engage.
Have you had conversations with any anti-porn people that are able to do that, or are all of them pretty dogmatic?
They all get pretty dogmatic, because if you get down to why, especially because most of them want it to be illegal, it's off of some moral ethic standpoint, but there's variance there. And like, you can't deny that there's not this lingering puritanical energy that exists with a lot of people. So to take that, you have to be able to kind of separate that out from your argument, just on facts. And then it's usually from the party that's screaming freedom. Well, where's my freedom to choose that?
Gotcha.
Yes.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question for the 3 people listening that are starting an OnlyFans in my audience. If you could give a tip to new creators, what do you think is like the best thing you could do right now to grow like a not safe for work content platform in today's industry?
I think it's to find other creators that you like, that are kind of role models for you, and do like shout out exchanges. I think stay away from contracts. Anyone that makes you sign one, that's the first sign that it's no good. Own all of your content. I would say it's best to build up your socials in a safe for work place. So don't think that you have to shoot for something like Bang Bros. You can actually like create this persona online, and that actually will follow you. That'll be a lot more successful in the long run, because people invest in the personality and not just because you're hot, because there's a million hot girls, right? So what leads to being successful is like showing your flaws and your personality and your character. So just like start on all the channels, find what you're passionate about, and ask other creators for help.
Okay. Yeah, I think for the successful people I see, it's usually they have other socials built up first, and then they move to those platforms, and they bring a lot of the people with them. So yeah. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for the chat. I appreciate it. If you could shout out like a website or a social, what would you shout out?
So you can go, I guess, Twitter, Eva Lovia, or Chatting with Candace. It's my podcast, my little baby I'm working on.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, if you ever want to chat again, or if anything comes up, feel free to give me a shout out. Otherwise, good luck and have fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too. See you later.